Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing e4master in the 15-minute pool in ICC. That username sounds like a challenge. So let's go ahead and open with King's Pawn. Okay, so we're going to get a Pirc with c6. Okay. And e4master playing very quickly. Looks like he has experience in this line. So c6 is unusual because most Pirc players just play g6. I think I'll just play knight f3. I'm going to proceed as normal. I played this setup before, involving knight f3, bishop e2, castles, bishop e3, queen d2. In particular, a game against a guy with the username George Clooney on ICC. So bishop g4 pinning my knight. I think bishop e2 is fine. There's a temptation after c6 to play a4 in a bid to discourage b5, but I don't think black really can get away with playing e5 too early. B5, that is. If they do play b5, I would be ready to play e5 and strike in the center in order to get counterplay. So knight bd7. I wonder if they're keeping open the option of playing like e6 and bishop e7. Or rather, solid setup for black. I'm just going to castle, but it's possible they'll do that. I've seen a couple games where black will initiate a trade on f3, like voluntarily take white's knight, and then play e6, bishop e7, and even though white has the bishop pair in space, it's hard to do much in the face of that wall of black pawns. But it seems like black is proceeding as usual now with queen c7. I say as usual because normally this setup is played with black's bishop back on c8, and later black would have to play b6 and bishop b7 in order to make it relevant. Here they already have the bishop outside the chain. So several moves come to mind. Rook e1, bishop e3. Again, the a4 move, but I feel it might not be necessary. I kind of like rook e1 because it does sort of threaten e5. So, like, let's say after rook e1, he plays something like g6. Then e5, d takes e5, d takes e5, knight takes e5 is not working for black in view of knight takes e5 with a discovered attack on their bishop. I mean, for that matter, could I play e5 right away? I might be able to, actually. That would be rather unusual, but it might work. So let's say e5, pawn takes. Let's say I take with my pawn. If knight takes e5, knight takes e5, I would be winning a piece in view of the bishop on g4 being attacked twice. But now I'm seeing if e5, black has bishop takes f3 if they want it. Yeah, and I'm probably not quite getting enough there. I'm going to abandon that entire plan. I'm just going to play bishop e3 and develop. Probably looking to play knight d2 soon, if black insists on sticking with this bishop on the g4 square. So if I trade on e5 and then play knight d2, and then we trade on e2, I think I might be slightly better in that resulting position. Looks like a pretty safe way to play. It's definitely unusual when the bishop is out here. I could also play knight d2 without the initial exchange on e5. Maybe I should play that way. That keeps a bit more mystery in the position. Because then I might play f4 with more force when I have both the d4 and the f4 pawn potentially attacking their center. Let's do that. So if he takes on e2, I'll take with my queen and thereby connect my rooks together. I haven't even had a chance to take a look at e4master's stats because they've been playing so fast. So let's take a look now. They have a peak 15-minute rating of 2050 with about close to 400 15-minute games played. b5 now, okay? All right, so this b5 move, it's not begging for a refutation, but I feel like I've played pretty logically so far. I've brought out all my pieces. I've castled, whereas black is languishing a bit in development. And the first move that comes to mind here is d5, trying to undermine the defense of the b5 pawn. So let's imagine d5, c takes d5, knight takes b5. That could turn out well, potentially, although queen b7, not winning anything per se. I could also just play a3 if I want to stop b4, or even f4 if I want to keep pressing in the center. If d5, there's also b4 to consider, counterattacking my knight on c3. I would like to sharpen the game on the queen side, though. I'll tell you that. If d5, b4, d takes c6, I'm just worried they might simply play queen takes c6. And knight d5 would be dropping a pawn. So I don't know if that's really working out too well. Okay, we'll just play a3. We'll keep it simple. And I expect him to want to catch up on his development very soon. So probably bishop e7. Let's say bishop e7, f4, castles. At that point, I could decide if I want to play like d takes e5, d takes e5, f5, and go for a kingside pawn storm. Or I might just swing the knight back to f3, now that I'm not going to play the knight into c4 anymore. He plays a6, solidifying the b5 pawn. Well, almost guaranteed over the next move or two, he's going to be trying to move the dark square bishop in castle. It's getting pretty dangerous for him to consider doing otherwise. Yeah, let's play f4. So if bishop e7, I'll consider d takes e5, d takes e5, f5. And if black castles, immediately playing g4 and starting that pawn storm. Other plans, like I said, would just be knight f3 immediately. Maybe rook a e1, maybe king h1 is a way to preface an attack. I don't know if I like trading and then playing f5 right away. It's a little bit limiting. But let's see it again. D takes e5, d takes e5, f5, castles, g4. I'm sort of putting all my eggs in one basket with that plan, although, I mean, it looks to be a good plan. So maybe I shouldn't stress over that. Yeah, he's not castled yet, so he's going to burn a tempo doing that. Yeah, let's give it a shot. We're down to 8.5 minutes left. He's got a solid time advantage, so proceeding with a clear plan could be in our best interest. And as I mentioned, he's going to have to burn a tempo castling, like now or on the next move, probably now. And after castles g4, g5 is staring him right in the face. And what could he do then? Because if h6, I'll play h4, more than likely. Again, gearing up for g5. I'm comfortable in pushing the pawns immediately in front of my king because he's kind of cut off. There's not a good way for him to attack my king. The center is closed and he can't like transfer his queen over there, for instance. Bishop c5 is interesting, looking to swap bishops. I think he might be trying to follow that with like a queen to b6 move. So I probably want to play like king h1. And we'll just pre-move this capture. But make it so that if he wants to trade, then he won't be able to follow with queen b6 and swap the queens as well. Admittedly, though, this might slow down our attack. Maybe I should have considered bishop takes c5 as well. He's getting fancy. He's going to play bishop d4. So trying to like double my pawns, maybe extract some value there. I think g4 though all the same. Could also play knight b3 if I wanted, but g4 would be the obvious move. I wonder if g4 he can play knight takes g4. No, I don't think that turns out well for black. g4, knight takes g4. I mean, I could take on d4 or on g4, and he's got loose stuff like the pawn on g7, for instance, if I take on g4. What if g4, knight c5? Pretty crude plan, but idea g5, take on c3? No, then I take on f6. That can't be good. Okay, I'm going for it. See what he's got. If a move like queen b6, then maybe I'll swap on d4. Oh, tactical point as well. If bishop takes e3 here, queen takes e3, knight takes g4. I was planning queen g3 or queen g5. Although I don't know, maybe I should have looked at those continuations a bit more. I was thinking I was just going to get at g7, but it's possible he could reinforce the knight with like knight df6 to block me. Like say bishop takes e3, queen takes e3, knight takes g4, queen g3, knight df6. I mean, I have h3 though. Should kick him away. Let's pre-move this capture, just in case. Yeah, it could get sharp here pretty soon. In retrospect, I'm not sure this is the best plan for me. I'll be interested to see when I go back and look at the analysis, like what the computer thinks I should have done around move 10 or so after that b5 move. So I played a3 and then tried to continue with f4, f5, but it's very likely that there was a better plan. So he's going to go after the g4 pawn. Okay, now, do I play queen g5 or do I play queen g3? It's a key question. Maybe he'll play, like, let's say queen g3, knight f6, queen takes g7, rook g8, queen h6, and then castle long. You could do that. Try to play for an attack against my king. All right, I'm not going to spend too long. I'm just going to play this move. And I expect him to retreat. He does. Yeah, I think he's going to go along with his king. Queen takes g7, rook g8, queen h6. Castle queenside. All right, well, we kind of have to do this anyways. So we'll take. Yeah, now castle's long. It's a little scary. I mean, the g-file is open. I have to exercise caution. This knight g4 is also a pretty clear idea for him, too. I might want to play queen e3. Just bring this knight back for defense, or my queen back for defense. And rook g1 is tempting, but knight g4. Like rook g1, knight g4, queen h4, knight df6. So that's why I kind of like queen e3. Queen e3, knight g4, queen e2. There also I have to be somewhat careful. Okay, rook g1, knight g4, queen h4, knight df6, knight f3. That's stuff like queen b6 then. Hmm. Okay, I'm going to go down that road. I think I need to oppose them on the G file, though. I think that's almost mandatory. And I'm getting rather low on time now. So knight g4, I'll play queen f2. And then after knight df6, I think knight f3 will be the move. Because my knight will then be attacked by his rook on d8. And I think if queen b6, I can play like a move like rook g2 or maybe rook af1. I should be able to keep everything defended and whatnot. And one concern I might have is like after knight g4, queen h4, if ever I play h3 to try to drive away that knight, they might be able to respond with h5. Seems strange, but the idea would be if h takes g4, h takes g4, and the h file is open, leading like directly towards my king. I'd be surprised if they didn't play knight g4. It seems like it's clearly the best move. Knight c5 is not good. I mean, for one thing, it leaves the knight here undefended. It does attack my rook, or my knight, rather. Okay, we got to play a little faster now. Yeah, let's go here. He's done a good job of pressuring me on the clock so far. He's made, like, good decisions without spending a lot of time. The position is complicating now, so I hope that I'll be able to regain some clock time that way. One tactical idea that may be present at some point is playing knight takes e5, trying to deflect this knight away so I can take the knight on f6. But with the queen's currently sitting on c7, that's not going to work. My knight on c3 is pretty poor. It's only defending that pawn on h3, or on e4. That's about it. Sometimes I'll like say the piece that I'm planning on moving. Like I just said pawn h3 because I'm thinking about playing pawn h3. Likewise, sometimes when I'm playing like an OTB game, I'll make a move and then I'll write down the square that I'm planning to move the piece to after that. Like let's say I write down, I play the move knight f6. I might write down like knight to e4 if I plan to bring the knight to e4 after that because I'm already thinking like ahead and I make that mistake. Yeah, it's scary. I mean, my king is kind of walled in, and the only thing that's stopping me from getting mated with knight f2 is the queen here. I mean, as far as I can tell, this queen cannot be deflected. That is a sneaky move. Are they trying to set up knight takes e4? Maybe. What if I just play h3 now, though? That gives my king some room to operate as well. Not sure about that move. It's a little weird looking. H3, probably knight e3, but then I have queen back to f2, don't I? H3, H5, I'm fine with throwing in those two moves. Okay. Well, you know the drill. When you're this low, you got to shoot first and ask questions later. Spend too much time pontificating and, yeah, you're going to get hurt. All right, so if queen f2, knight c4, I assume. Still, though, it seems like he might have lost the thread a bit. I don't need my queen on h4 anymore, so that's why I'm withdrawing it and defending the c2 pawn and trying to drive away this knight. It's nice that I can take on g8 if I want in order to reduce some of the pressure. I mean, also my queen might very well get into his position. Okay, so if I take on g8, he takes with the rook. Let's say I play b3 then. If knight takes a3, queen b6 looks pretty good. So rook takes g8, rook takes g8, b3, knight d6. Let's say queen c5 at that point. I don't know. Maybe I should play b3 first. Yeah, let's do that straight away. We'll drive away this knight.
Check.
Okay, he's going to take on g1. Guess maybe there's queen takes a3. But he's leaving his king pretty open in the process of doing this. Knight back to d6, okay. So queen c5 was the move I was thinking of here. And let's play it. So we attack e5 and we also attack c6 by doing this. Maybe could have played queen b6 too, I'm not sure. Like queen b7 would have covered everything there. Here I'm expecting king b7, and then I'll play knight takes e5, threatening c6. Okay, well suddenly in the span of a few moves, my position is looking up. But that time situation is a concern. We gotta hustle. If knight takes f5 here, we take on c6 with check, and then that knight will be hanging. So that's no problem. Okay, they play the queen there. I should probably take on e5 with my knight. Or with my queen, I mean. Yeah, let's take it with the queen. Okay, so now take here. They're going to take on e5. And we'll have a choice in this position, whether to take on f7 or take on c6. Let's take on f7. Because I want that pawn to be dangerous. The f pawn, that is. 2 minutes, 12 seconds. So if rook f8, I'm thinking about playing rook g7, defending the knight. And then if this knight ever moves away, we might have knight d6 check. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And we're hitting the h7 pawn. So that looks good. You can play like rook d5, but I have knight h6 in that case. Knight f2 check doesn't really do anything, I don't believe. All right, and it's a blitz game. He's under 5 minutes. But it's like a thematic blitz game, you know. Okay, rook in. He's choosing an aggressive route. We'll offer to trade. Defend our c2 pawn in the process. Let's pre-move this capture. If knight f2, I think just king h2. He can win c2, but like my pawn becomes very dangerous then. Okay, rook d5. Yeah, I'll probably just play this. Maybe knight g5? Knight g5 might be a bit better, but then he's going to go to f6. Okay, knight h6 it is. Maybe rook g7 in the future. $138. Another thing I might do is play king h2 next, and then try to go rook e2 and drive away this knight. That might be the best plan. So either king h2 or rook g7 on the next move. I'll have to make up my mind, but king h2 is much safer. The purpose would be, you know, I can't play rook e2 right away because of knight g3 check with the fork. So I need to preface it with a king move to cover that square. You can play rook d6 to chase my knight, but then knight g4.
Check.
Okay. He's going to go behind the pawn, maybe. That's all right, though. Rook f1, rook g8, rook g7, take this pawn. We're making progress. Really? You're going to go for that trade? I do not believe this. f6, king d8. Huh. f6, king d8. Knight f7. Nah, I still don't believe it. Okay, let's go here, actually. This looks really weird, but I'm trying to go 95 check. And then go after his c-pawn. 50 seconds, though. Maybe c5. But then I can check and play f7. At least that'll be hard to defend against.
Check.
Okay, let's give a check and go take this c6 pawn. Well, we're up a pawn now. Clean pawn. Won't be easy to win, though. I mean, knight endings with one extra pawn are never simple. Let's play knight b8. Go after that a pawn. So if a5, knight back to c6, a4, I have knight d4 check followed by taking. But he'll take on b3 at the end. I might have had better than that move.
Check.
It's giving a check instead. Okay, I got to step here. Okay, let's play c3. If I'd gone to g2, he's going to check and pick up the c-pawn. So that's why I didn't step to that square. 28 seconds left. Just going to try to go after the a-pawn, basically. He has knight d5 now, though. Everything's going to get simplified. Knight d5, knight c6, take c3, take a5, take a4. Just a draw. Unless I can go knight d5, c4, knight c3, c5. Oh, he's not doing that. Okay. Not sure where he's going with his king. I mean, yeah, you can get it in here, but I think he'd rather, like, not get into a position with two pawns versus one. If king e3, I might
Time warning.
Might come up here. And then sack for that a-pawn. The final pawn. I mean, I'm the only one who can win this now. Be nice to get rid of his last pawn. Now he's got to bring his knight out. If knight e5, I have king g7, though. This should be winning. Yeah, you can't do anything. to keep me from queening.
Check. Check.
And I win this. I'll do this in the easiest way possible.
Checkmate.
All right. Wow. So we won that endgame. Yeah, it should have been a draw, but he played inaccurately in that knight endgame for sure. I mean, I think the easiest draw was, where was it? Right here. If he had played knight d5. Knight d5, c4, knight c3. And he's going to get at this pawn. And I think his king is like way too close to my a pawn. Let's go back and take a look, though. That was very strange at the end. He didn't try to use his knight to stop my pawn. I mean, I was going to make it difficult for him with my king, but he didn't even attempt a route to go and stop the pawn. Okay, so this bishop g4 in conjunction with c6, not worrying about the kingside development, turned out okay for him. Knight d2. So right around here, this is the first point in the game where I'm curious what the computer thinks I should do. It says a4. a4, b4, knight a2. Attacking b4. Then that pawn needs to be supported. Let's say they support it with a5. Now play c3 and try to open the queenside. Yeah, I did mention that I thought queenside play or a center break like f4 would be the way to go in view of his backward development a little bit. The fact that he hasn't moved his bishop and castle. But couldn't figure out a good way. I thought d5 was a little suspect in view of b4. D takes c6. Queen takes c6. I don't really see anything here. Queen b5. Attacking their queen, supported by my knight. Okay. And hitting the b4 pawn. And if there's a trade, I'm hitting a7, and I'm also threatening knight c7 check with the fork. Yeah, that's the type of thing I would have liked to play, which I didn't see in the game. So I played it safe and played a3, stopping him from playing b4. He goes a6. I played f4. Bishop e7. Yeah, and this plan, in retrospect, I don't think this plan worked out too well. Maybe I should play knight f3. Keep the tension, maintain pressure on e5. But it looks like the lion's share of my advantage has dissipated. And this isn't a huge advantage I'm working with. So probably I missed my opportunity in not playing a4. a4 would have been a nice move. Or d5, one of those two moves. So we traded. I pushed f5. They played bishop c5. I was expecting castles instead. And even here, maybe I should just come to grips with the fact that g4, g5 is, you know, not a great idea. Bishop d4 was strong. Yeah, it's an interesting move. Yeah, at many turns, like black didn't play the obvious move, like, you know, castling over the past couple moves. They played bishop c5, bishop d4 instead of just whisking their king away to safety. But it seems justified because I have a hard time breaking through. Yeah, now they took and went for that pawn on g4, which does seem to turn out well. So I'd say g4 was probably one of my bigger mistakes of the game. I just have to... Knight d1, the computer likes, maybe trying to play c3. Because I mentioned that this knight stands poorly on the c3 square anyways. So queen g3, got to get my pawn back. But then it's almost like they have a free attack. It's like a free roll of attack. I tried to oppose them down the file. Yeah, black's already -1 here. Queen b6, why is queen b6 so strong? Maybe trying to come into f2? Also just eyeing the g1 square altogether. Yeah, I'm overextended now. For sure I'm overextended on the king side. And black's king, in comparison, is extremely safe. So they play knight g4, queen here, knight f3, and suddenly I'm better. Wow, yeah, I didn't get that impression during the game. I still felt like a little on edge. I felt like I was fighting for equality, just trying to hold everything together. Stop knight f2, be able to drive away their knight, keep my second rank guarded. I guess it's about equal. The engine keeps changing its mind. So queen e7, I played h3, knight e3, queen f2. I did feel better at this point. Now b3, yep. I could also insert the trade on g8 if I want, and then play b3. But that is not as good, huh? Here, queen b6, queen b7. Okay. Yeah, I guess that g-file pressure could contain me in an endgame. Queen b7 is possible because after a queen trade, I don't have this in view of this move. Well, actually, that's not true. Rook g3 is better. Wow, skewering the knights. Yeah, I definitely didn't make that connection. I just played b3 first to be flexible compared to taking on g8. But b3, and they took on g1. Yeah, and then I get this nice queen c5 move in, pinning them here so they can't take on e4, and also attacking c6 and e5. Still, I think black defended pretty well. Queen c7, queen takes here, knight d takes. So I win a pawn out of this transaction. I like taking the f7 pawn versus c6 because if I take c6, like, yeah, I'm up a pawn on the queen side, but how is this majority going to be dangerous when they have like all their pieces over there, including their king, and I don't? I'd rather take the f7 pawn and try to utilize my passed f pawn, distract them. And I thought black's defense was not optimal from this point forward. I mean, maybe they can get away with this, but like they've already wasted some tempos playing like rook d2, rook back to d5, and then rook d1 check, and then rook d2 again. That was literally their last 4 moves. And it's not like I've achieved anything like groundbreaking in the meantime, but I have nearly consolidated my position. So, yeah, maybe rook d5 directly was better if they're going to go for this rook d5 idea. I don't think there's anything to be gained by like luring my rook to a square where it defends the c2 pawn.
Check.
But even here, it was tough to win. So takes, and here I should have played knight g4. I shouldn't advance the f pawn as quick as I did. Yeah, I mean, my technique wasn't perfect either. Let's say king d8. King g3, bring the king up. Okay, maybe my king can assist. The engine claims +2, but it's still going to take a lot of work to win that. Instead, I advance the f pawn, hoping to draw their king away and go take this pawn, but that doesn't do much. Would have been better again to bring up my king. King g2, let's say king e6, f7 here, king f4. Okay, yeah. And just hope to like use the king on the queen side, I think is the point. Try to get in on the queen side. As it turned out, like my king was pretty much a spectator until the very end. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure this ending should be a draw. Even after black, does all this. Yeah, even here they're still drawing. A4, take, and king f4. Yep, something like, well, I thought knight d5 in the game, I think. But something like that, a knight move towards my pawns, and don't move the king again. There's no point in playing king f4. That would have secured it for him. Because like I said, if black's original idea was to try to get in here, I mean, they'd much rather just eliminate the kingside pawns first and then go after my h-pawn versus allowing me a 2 versus 1 on this side of the board. Even that might be a draw, but I mean, why risk that? So here I just played king h2. If they would have played like king f3 or something, I don't think I can make too much progress because my king can't really get out. And I need this knight kind of standing where it is, because if I move it, then they might play knight b2 and go after this knight. So actually their knight on c4 is doing a really good job of defending a5, that one weakness, and stopping both my a and c pawns. So again, this is a draw, but they cut back towards that pawn. This is also probably still a draw. In fact, I'm sure it is. But now at least I get to eliminate their last pawn, so now I'm going to get a draw for sure. And they just, yeah, they didn't make an attempt to defend against the pawn with the knight coming back to assist. Yeah, like knight e3 would have been a simple way to do it here. Then if h6, knight here, and they'll just sack for the pawn on the next move. I'd have to play king here probably, but then knight g4, king here, knight e5. If ever I advance this pawn, then knight check, forking the king and the pawn. Yeah, and black is just going to kind of wheel around between e5, f7, h6, and g4. It's actually pretty standard in situations where a knight is trying to stop a pawn, and the side with the knight, their king can't assist. It's standard to look for a 4-point kind of wheel like this, basically, where if your knight has access to at least 2 of those squares, it's going to get access to all 4 of the squares. So there's no way I can like kick him out because he'll always have a place to go, like king f5, knight f7, king here, etc. You know, there'll always be a
Check.
square that they can maneuver the knight in and stop the pawn. But as played, they move the king back, and now they're losing. They can't get into that wheel quick enough. Now it's just promoting my pawn and winning. So, all right, yeah, very interesting game. You know, I didn't do too well at the beginning of this game. I think my opponent was outplaying me in the opening and middle game, but probably if they were to do it over again, they might want to play like this position differently. That queen b6 move would have been nice, but I also was thinking knight g4 in their defense. So, okay, hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'll be back tomorrow with another standard video. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.